In 1977, a shy math student at Cambridge University spent a summer holiday building a computer. The device was simple. It read electronic tags on each cow and released the right amount of feed. Her name was Sophie Wilson, and a few years later, working at a tiny British computer company, Sophie and a small team made a computer chip so revolutionary that it would define the following decades of technology. That chip was called the Acorn Machine, or ARM for short. Today, over 280 billion chips built on Sophie Wilson's architecture have been manufactured. That is more than any other processor design in human history. And yet almost nobody knows her name. She didn't become a billionaire or become famous. Instead, she lives a quiet life in Cambridge, England. But the architecture she designed now sits underneath virtually every piece of technology. And right now, two superpowers are fighting over it. This is the story of how ARM took over the world.
Recently, you did the biggest investment you've ever made in a company called ARM, which is ARM. Why did you spend $31 billion buying a semiconductor manufacturer when many people think that that's not the future?
They designed all the chipset. They have 99% market share for any smartphone that you have in your pocket. In next 20 years, they're gonna ship 1 trillion chips. If chip is something that everybody needs, and if there is one company has 90% market share, there must be a value. I think the company is going to be more valuable than Google.
ARM has one of the most interesting business models in the technology industry. It categorically is one of the largest chip companies in the world, yet it doesn't actually make any chips or own any factories. It simply designs the blueprints that tell chips how to think, and then it licenses those blueprints to everyone else. In 2025, the company made nearly $5 billion in revenue. That might sound small until you realize that it has a gross profit margin of 97.5% and a market cap of over $200 billion. But let's take a step back. In 1969, NASA sent 3 men to the moon using a computer called the Apollo Guidance Computer. It weighed 70 pounds and had 64 kilobytes of memory. The machine represented the absolute cutting edge of human engineering in the late 60s. The smartphone in your pocket right now is roughly 120 million times faster and has about 1 million times more memory. You could theoretically guide 120 million Apollo spacecraft to the moon simultaneously with the phone you use to check Instagram. Meaning, by the standards of the 60s and 70s, 8 billion people today are walking around with supercomputers in their pockets. And at the height of this revolution is a company that most people have never heard of. The meteoric rise of ARM begins in the early 1980s with a small British computer company called Acorn Computers. At the time, Acorn was trying to build the BBC microcomputer, a machine the British government wanted in every school in the country. Acorn's engineers evaluated every available chip on the market and found nothing that met their needs, so they decided to design their own. In 1983, a team led by Sophie Wilson and Steve Ferber began designing a new kind of processor from scratch. At the time, the dominant philosophy in chip design was to make processors more powerful by making them more complex. For example, Intel's chips were becoming increasingly elaborate, with hundreds of different instructions hardwired into the silicon. Wilson and Ferber went in the opposite direction. They embraced a philosophy called RISC, reduced instruction set computing. Instead of building a chip that could do hundreds of things, they built one that did a small number of things extremely well and extremely efficiently. The result was the Acorn RISC machine. The first ARM chip was produced in 1985, and the chip was remarkably efficient. The BBC Micro, which housed the chip, had been a hit in British schools. Over 1.5 million were sold. But the company behind it was falling apart. Acorn had tried to break into the home computer market with a cheaper machine called the Electron. A successful advertising campaign generated 300,000 orders for the Christmas of 1983, but its Malaysian suppliers could only deliver 30,000 machines by Christmas. Parents, frustrated, went out and bought from Acorn's competitors. By the time the production problems were fixed, the demand had disappeared, and Acorn was sitting on over 100,000 unsold Electrons piling up in warehouses. Then Acorn spent $20 million trying to launch the BBC Micro in America. Existing players like Apple, IBM, and Commodore were already dominating the American market and had left no room for new entrants like Acorn. The chip designs Acorn was producing were being wasted inside a failing computer company. So in 1990, Acorn spun off its chip division into a new independent company. The new company was called Advanced Risk Machines. The company started with just 12 employees and they faced an existential question. How does a 12-person company compete with Intel, a corporation with tens of thousands of engineers and billions in revenue? The answer was they didn't. Instead of trying to manufacture chips and compete head-to-head with the giants, ARM decided they would only design the blueprints necessary for chip design and license those out to other companies who would do the actual manufacturing. Every time a company used ARM's architecture to design a chip, ARM collected an upfront licensing fee. Then every time that chip shipped in a product, ARM collected a royalty, often just pennies. Pennies don't sound like much until you multiply them by billions of chips per year. But in the early 1990s, none of that scale existed yet. ARM was licensing its designs to a handful of companies making chips for calculators, printers, and other low-power devices. The moment that changed everything came in the form of Texas Instruments, who came to ARM looking for a chip design for an emerging new category of device, the mobile phone. Mobile phones had a problem. They ran on batteries which had limited power. ARM's chips, with their almost miraculous efficiency, were perfect. Texas Instruments licensed ARM's design and built it into Nokia's early mobile phones. By the end of the 1990s, ARM's architecture had become the default standard for mobile phones worldwide. Then 2007 happened.
And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
Steve Jobs stood on stage and unveiled the future, the iPhone. The processor inside Apple's iPhone was designed on ARM's architecture. In its first year, the iPhone sold 5 million units, then 11 million, then 20 million, and before long, there were hundreds of millions of iPhones across the world, all built on ARM architecture. Then Android accelerated that trend. Essentially, the smartphone revolution, the single largest explosion of consumer technology in human history, ran entirely on ARM's architecture. Then ARM's dominance grew again when Apple switched its MacBook processor from Intel to its own silicon processors. Those chips used ARM's architecture. Today, ARM technology powers nearly every server in the world. The GPUs that are currently powering the AI revolution, those too use ARM architecture. ARM uniquely occupies one of the most valuable positions in the tech industry. On the surface, you might assume that its moat is its fantastic architecture design. That's only the tip of the iceberg. Its true moat is the decades of software built around the architecture. This software ecosystem encompasses Android, iOS, Windows, millions of applications, and so much more. Switching away from ARM isn't a matter of changing a supplier. You'd have to rewrite everything. The ecosystem lock-in is so deep that even the most powerful nations on earth find themselves unable to function without a company that most of their citizens have never heard of. In 2016, Japan's SoftBank acquired ARM for $32 billion. Then in 2020, Nvidia attempted to buy ARM from SoftBank for $40 billion. The UK government intervened on national security grounds. The European Commission raised serious concerns of monopoly. China signaled they would never approve it. The US Federal Trade Commission sued to block it. 4 separate governments from 3 different continents all agreed on one thing: ARM was too important to be controlled by any single company or country. The US government has increasingly looked at ARM as a choke point. If you can control who ARM licenses its most advanced designs to, you can control who gets to build competitive chips. US export controls have already complicated ARM's ability to license its most advanced Neoverse data center designs to Chinese firms. Without access to ARM's latest blueprints, China cannot design chips that compete with Nvidia or Apple at the cutting edge. Nearly all of China's domestically designed chips are built on ARM architecture. When China talks about chip independence, what it really means is independence from American factories. At the design level, China is completely dependent on ARM. This dependency runs through one of the strangest corporate entities in the entire technology industry, a company called ARM China. Arm China operates as a semi-independent entity and acts as the exclusive distributor of Arm's intellectual property in mainland China. The relationship has been chaotic, to say the least. In 2020, Arm tried to fire the CEO of Arm China, a man named Alan Wu. After allegations of conflicts of interest, Wu refused to leave. For over 2 years, he effectively held the Chinese subsidiary hostage, using his control of the company's official seal, a physical stamp required under Chinese law to execute legal documents. Wu had local backing that made removing him through Chinese courts nearly impossible. Arm sent representatives, but they were turned away. For over 2 years, the company that designs the architecture inside nearly every phone on the planet could not control what was happening inside its own Chinese subsidiary. It took until 2022 and extensive restructuring negotiations to finally resolve the crisis. The saga was bizarre, but it exposed something fundamental. Arm's business in China exists in a political environment where the rules can be bent in ways that would be unthinkable in London or New York. But China also took things a step further. Having anticipated US export restrictions, China came up with a plan B. It called it RISC-V. RISC-V is an open source chip architecture that anyone can use without paying royalties or asking permission. It has captured roughly 25% of the global chip market, largely in low power devices, and China has become its biggest champion. Alibaba, Tencent, and dozens of other Chinese startups are investing heavily in RISC-V as an escape route from ARM dependency, an architecture that no foreign government can restrict access to. But for now, RISC-V is years, possibly a decade behind ARM. But what could accelerate the adoption of RISC-V is ARM's sudden change in philosophy.
Right, ARM reportedly launching its own chip this year in a move that some say could upend the semiconductor industry.
They have traditionally not been in this market. Their business model has been licensing.
This year, ARM announced that it is planning to create its own physical processor, built in partnership with Meta and manufactured by TSMC. ARM's bet is clear. Royalties from licensing are valuable, but they only capture a tiny fraction of the value generation. A royalty might be a few cents per chip, while the chip itself sells for tens of hundreds of dollars. By selling physical processors directly, ARM can capture the full product margin. The company believes this strategy could generate up to $15 billion in annual revenue within 5 years. But the risk is equally clear. If ARM alienates the ecosystem of partners that made it indispensable, the very foundation of its power could crack. Companies that feel threatened by ARM competing against them have a much stronger incentive to invest in RISC-V or develop alternative architectures. The more aggressively ARM pursues its own silicon chips, the faster the escape routes from its ecosystem will be built. But for now, ARM has arguably the most immovable position in the tech industry. But the ARM story is a little bit different. This isn't one of those stories where a ruthless entrepreneur sets out to conquer the world, or a story about powerful figures and large corporations plotting to control industry. It's a story about how a seemingly inconsequential invention had ripple effects that touched billions of devices. All those decades ago, the woman who started it all spent her summer holiday building a computer to feed cows. She wasn't trying to create a geopolitical choke point or a company worth hundreds of billions of dollars. She was just trying to make a chip that did more with less. It's a story of how the world actually works. As it turns out, the biggest ripple effects come from decisions made by people doing their work in unassuming rooms, solving problems that seemed small at the time. Then all of a sudden, market forces, innovation, and politics converge to turn what was a solution to a small problem into the most important technology of our time. But the question now is, do you think ARM is orchestrating its own downfall by creating its own processors and competing directly with its customers? Or will this be its path to trillions of dollars in market cap in the insane era of AI spending? Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.